morning and welcome to this planning preview session. We'll be discussing items for the Planning Commission meeting, which will be held on September 7th at Carnegie Town Hall at 6 p.m. I'm here with Jeff Schmidt from the Planning Office. And first of all, Jeff, before we dive into the agenda items, as the city plans ahead for future growth and development, what direction do you really look toward for that growth, and what is the reason why?
Sure, it's been a really interesting conversation lately. We have a consultant out there that's looking at our 50 and 100 years of growth. I mean, so when you think about it, we're going to grow almost double in size from where we're now. Again, in 100 years, so please understand it. But we've been asking people, where should we grow and why? You sit there and you go, you can grow north, south, east, and west, and then you can get more specific over that, and over 25 years, 50 years, over these time frames. So where do people want us to grow and why? You start asking people this. If you're at coffee, if you're at church, wherever you're at, and think about the question. Most of it's housing. That's where most of our land gets developed. It's housing. So where do people want to live? And you go, okay, that's part of it. Do they need to live close to their jobs? So where do the jobs need to be? Where do the houses need to be? So that starts narrowing things. Or does it? Do people really care about where their jobs are at in Sioux Falls versus, because...
Right. Well, and that's it's so easy to get around our community right now. I mean, it doesn't take 5-10 minutes really to get anywhere.
People don't have that decision. They go, I'm going to live here, and I work. They don't have that decision like they do in Minneapolis or Chicago, where they go, I have to live close.
But we say that now.
Right.
When you look at it 50 to 100 years out, I mean, it's going to be a very different picture. But the other part of this also is you have to look at how our town grows.
Correct.
And it grows really by the sewer capacity, and that's how our town is driven by the growth. And so that also
comes into play.
It does.
So then you go, okay, if it's work, homes, what about services? Do people care about services? Shopping, offices. So then you look at that, and do they need to be close? And lately what we've been hearing, no, that's not really an issue because we have it on all the corners. We have it enough.
Well, and that's because of, in my opinion, the smart decisions that have been made by the city and the developers of of our community to really make those pocket retailers, pocket things, so we don't have to drive 10 miles to get something.
Before, 5, 10, 20 years ago, when they're like, I hated living here because everything was over here.
Right.
Now they don't have that, so that comes up. What about schools? Is it really important for people because of housing? Is schools really important? That's a big driver now, folks.
Absolutely.
And in 50 and 100 years...
I don't think that's really going to change that much in 50 to 100 years. I think schooling still will be very important.
Big thing.
It always is. And that won't change. But in my opinion, even now, we've just designed our community so great that it's already really servicing the way that it should. And then when you look at 50 to, because it's crazy to think that you're going to look that far ahead. I mean, I'm not even going to tell you how old I'm going to be in 50 years. And so, but it is an interesting
27?
Discussion, because what's important today, what's important to people today certainly may not be tomorrow. But you just have to make those decisions for what is the best decision for the community.
Right. And then the last thing that we kind of threw out there, as you kind of progress through there, and these are long discussions because it's, it's not black and white. It's not just here's the answer. But then you go, what about the ground? What about the land? Is that really important to people? And you go, because do people want to be on the best ground? When they build a house, they all say yes. But they mean no, right? Because they go, yes, I want to build my house on the best ground, but then when it comes down to it, it's the price point. Okay, because if they wanted to all build on the best ground, then they wouldn't be building in some of the places that they're building right now. Because then when we, as you already alluded to, when we put in this infrastructure for the next 50 and 100 years, if we put it all in certain areas, then people go, why did you put it in there? I didn't want to grow there because of the work, shopping, schools, ground. We're like, but you told us that you wanted to go to the best ground with the best schools. And they're like, yeah, but we didn't really mean that. So it's a great conversation to have when you're sitting there thinking about it. Give us that feedback. Talk about it. Go, or absolutely, we're doing the right thing and we put in the 50, 75, $100 million worth of infrastructure. Are we hearing the right things from the community? we want to hear from the stakeholders, and we've been asking people, and it's a great conversation to have.
Well, and it's a good reminder for the community to input is so valuable and it's so important, but you also have to remember that it's not a short-term decision, and that I think is probably one of the biggest challenges really for people to remember and to think. It's like, okay, you can't just think about the here and now. You have to think about that down the road, and that's not always easy to do.
No.
I mean, it's a bit of a challenge sometimes.
And it's something that you and I deal with as Planning Commission all the time, because then we're like, someone's made this decision 20 years ago, 40 years ago to grow into this area, to put infrastructure, to have development. And then we have this little item there, and they're like, why are you putting in housing in this area? We're like, well, 40 years ago, there was this person at a coffee shop that said this was the area to go. So it kind of comes circular, people, and we're trying to hear from you now. We're always asking your opinion. And it is important to hear at a planning commission meeting, but it's really important to hear from you and your children and your grandchildren about where do you think we should be going next. So
it only helps everyone and the community. So involvement's important.
Yep.
All right, well, we'll dive into the agenda items again for the Planning Commission meeting for September 7th. Once again, as we go through these items, it's always important, if you have any questions or concerns with any of the items we discussed this morning, please contact the planning office, as sometimes things do get pulled off the agenda and it changes. Okay, first of all, we have a rezone from ag to live, work, and some residential located at 57th and Southeastern, which is a pretty active area right now, and it's on the southeast corner.
Not many rezoning items this month, not many activities for agenda items, but this first one's in the southeast corner of 57th and Southeastern. It's the Ryder Farm. It's recently been annexed in the City of Sioux Falls. So as Andy said, they're proposing to have some offices and some apartments, some live work, some twin homes, some townhomes, maybe some apartments in that area, but again, transitioning from that corner down into what's already existing there.
And it's very similar to other areas of town where we've had a little bit heavier use on the corner, and then it transitions down into the residential use,
really
which sounds like it makes sense.
Pretty typical.
Yeah. Another rezone from RS family to the RT single family. Now, before I tell you the location, the next two rezones are this exact same thing. Why don't you tell people maybe the difference between RS single family and then the rezone request to RT single family?
And when we did the zoning changes back in 2014, we tried to make these more understanding to people, but again, we always have to, as Andy alluded to, explain it. The RS is residential suburban, and the RT is residential traditional. So RS is in suburbia where the lots are bigger, the setbacks are bigger, the land area is more. In residential traditional lots, they're 50-foot lots. They're inside the river greenway, or they're inside the core.
And typically the locations for this transition and this request aren't in the new
suburban
areas.
Yeah.
And so that's why you need to do this rezone.
Yep. So a lot of the land still inside the core, inside the area, was already developed. There's houses on it, and RS is fine because there's a house there. But these two are vacant parcels. They were zoned RS, residential suburban, but they really work better as traditional smaller lots because the lots are smaller, and so they're rezoning to that traditional size where their setbacks are a little less and they're still building single family
and
homes.
the lot is smaller.
Yes.
I mean, so the lot is smaller, so this really is more of a cleanup.
Citizens, when you're hearing this and you go out there and look at your lot's probably 100 to 150 foot wide and then deep. These are 50-foot lot depths. I mean, they're very narrow, and so then they can build on that.
Well, and the locations kind of speak volume to that. The first one's located at 600 South Lincoln Avenue, and the second one is same rezone request, is located at 612 South Williams Avenue.
Correct. Yes.
So that's just a touch on those two. Next is another rezone from S1 General Institutional to the C3 Commercial. Now, before again I tell the location, this seems like a big jump as far as a rezone change from S1 to C3. Maybe you can explain that a little bit.
It is a big jump. We need to have some public input on this one. Staff really needs to hear from the citizens. We're having a public hearing. S1 is institutional, And C3 is the higher commercial. C1, C2, C3. It can build up to 75,000 square foot commercial uses, and then the associated parking, the setbacks, the signage. So this is 1200 East 3rd Street. This is the Franklin School. This is the site down on Cliff and 3rd Street. So it was, and it's been sitting vacant for a while. So it's on a commercial strip, but is it really appropriate to have that institutional school commercial, or should it be a different type of commercial? Because if it changes to C3 commercial, then you have to have all the associated parking. And we don't know if it fits the neighborhood or if the neighborhood's in support of it. That's why we have a public meeting.
And I think the rest of the information will be really helpful for
Correct.
the public, which I think you'll see some of that
Correct.
during this session as well. We have another conditional use for an election message center sign located at 1101 East 57th.
My typo. That's an electric message center sign, even though it is getting close to November and it could be an election.
I was kind of curious about that. So okay.
Sorry. So this is at 57th and Cliff, and it's on 1101 East 57th Street, Quail Run. This is Linwood Wesleyan Church, and their church sign, they want to convert it to a
an electronic
message board. Since it's on a arterial street, it gets more support from the public, from our standpoint, than if it was on a residential street. So.
All right, and another conditional use for on-sale alcohol within 500 feet of a sensitive use, and this is located at 1605 West Burnside.
Sensitive uses are churches, parks, residential, single family, and so this is the Burnside Bingo. Burnside Bingo out there on Burnside and Western Avenue, right?
Yep.
And so they want to have on-sale alcohol beverage at that site, and so we need to have a public hearing. So.
All right, well, that wraps it up for this planning preview session.
Yeah.
And again, if you have any questions on any of the agenda items, the planning office number is 367-8888. Please feel free to contact anyone there. They'd be happy to help you out. And we appreciate your time. Thank you.